welcome to Art at the Tap End. This is an early morning episode because the next person, or the person I'm speaking to today, is an early riser. So without further ado, let's see who is at the tap end today. Mike Denison, how are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, and you're in your bath as well. This is amazing. This is amazing. So thank you so much for joining me at the tap end today. But for those people who don't know, I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't, but who is Mike Denison? Who is Mike Denison?
Who is Mike Denison? Well, Mike is somebody who's dedicated probably the last 30 years of his life to trying to help people and companies get better every day, I guess is one thing. Mike Denison is an adventurer, somebody who likes challenge, somebody who likes to help other people, likes to solve problems, likes to get engaged in things that are fun and challenge him.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, this isn't a challenge for you this morning, is it? Sitting in your bath at 7:30 in the morning. This is no challenge for you?
No challenge at all. Stretching those neural pathways.
Yeah, good on you. Well, thank you so much for joining us. So when you say you've been in improvement or helping people for 30 years, did you say? Did improvement find you, or did you find improvement?
I guess I found improvement on the basis that I how would I put this? I've always been somebody who likes to find better ways of doing things. That's always been me. That's who I am, I guess. And I found myself working for a company called Toyota in the early 1990s. I was recruited in there to run their machining lines and head up the recruitment drive for bringing new technicians and people in to run the operation. So I was head of machining for a number of years. We ran something called a member development framework and program, which was developing and teaching Toyota's production systems and technical systems and manufacturing systems. So I was part of that. And I guess just being part of that organization of Toyota basically instilled in me a bit more of a framework to improvement than what I had before. Before it was just, I just liked improving things, whether it was my motorbikes, whether it was things on the house, whether it was things in the garden, whether it was lawnmowers, how do you make them run better? And that was always who I was. But now I had a bit more of a framework around it because in Toyota, obviously, they have a very good structure for teaching people how to think about improvements, how to apply more of a scientific approach to it. And that became how it was. And really, since those early days in the 1990s, that's the way I think. It's the way I am now, I guess, as a person. So sometimes I talk about it being a bit like brainwashing, but I mean that in the most positive way. When you work with a company like Toyota, the type of education that you get, the support that you get, the coaching that you get, the encouragement, the challenges that you get put in, it can't help but develop you. But it develops you in such a way as it does become the way that you think. If you talk with anybody who's ever worked in that organization for a significant amount of time, then they will probably say that they think the way that Toyota wanted them to think. And that's a good thing, because I think they do teach you to be a better human being.
Yeah. So you just said about thinking there. And in fact, I say one question about Toyota. What prompted you to leave Toyota and go out by yourself? Because I guess was that the step? Did you go from Toyota to then by yourself, or did you go from Toyota to another employer?
No, I went Toyota to another employer. I went into a consultancy company. And, I guess I left Toyota because there was opportunities out there to grow more. There's one part of me that wish I stayed longer, because I would have learned more in a way. But there's another part that said I was ready for something else. And so I stepped out, a big step. It took several months to actually make the decision, even though I was being offered the work. And it was a new avenue. And I'm somebody really that's recognized that actually I need to get out of my comfort zone to grow. And that's part of it. And ever since then, really, I mean, I've really pushed myself to stretch, how I think, to stretch what I do. I don't like being uncomfortable, but I've learned that when you're uncomfortable, that's when you grow the most. And I guess part of it. And the same thing happened when, I left Toyota, joined a consultancy company, helped a lot of different organizations, companies like Ford, Bombardier, Jaguar Motors at the time, many companies in that consultancy. But in 2005, I decided that actually I wanted to be on my own. That actually I was better making decisions for myself rather than working in a framework of an organization. And so I set my own organization up in 2005, Clear Reality Limited, which was a coaching company, and then Lean Mentor International, which is my lean leadership development company. Set that up in 2005, and I've never looked back since, to be honest.
Yeah, amazing. You use the word uncomfortable then. Do you find it uncomfortable talking to another man in the bath?
No, not at all, unfortunately. Yeah. So I'm not going to grow this morning, am I?
No. So in your last two answers, you've used the word think and thinking. How do so thinking appears to it, or is a big part of what you do, and you continue to think and challenge yourself. But how does somebody or how do you help somebody think more?
Well, very often, I've developed a number of frameworks that I use to teach and coach people that I work with, and everybody thinks clearly, but most people, when they think, they don't think about thinking, if I can explain it that way. And so the way I tend to work is make the thinking more conscious. And you can do that through questions. And so one of the big frameworks, where in 2003 and 4, before I actually left to go off on my own, I studied coaching and a coaching style of leadership, took qualifications in it. And I learned very, very quickly that actually questions are a really powerful way of encouraging somebody to think. And it can help encourage people to think in a certain way by using certain questions. It can help develop various parts of the neural connection in our brain. So if you ask questions in a certain way, you can lead towards causing somebody to think using various parts of the brain, whether it's the frontal part or the rear part. And so I didn't realize that at the time, but obviously my studies in later years meant that I could actually now start to design questions that help people think in a certain way. And it wasn't to brainwash them, it was more to actually get them to realize that they have more capacity inside than they probably realize for themselves. And I went through that change myself, to be fair. When I was at Toyota, it was a great company, but quite a stressful time. And I had to learn how to deal with the level of difficulties that I was being placed under. So I went away and studied all sorts of different things at the time to actually help develop me as a stronger person, so that I could help others.
Yeah, love that. What kind of questions help the thinker think, or help the learner think?
Yeah, so open questions, clearly. Everyone would probably grasp that to some extent. Any question that you ask that causes somebody to search around for the answer is a more powerful question. So if you tend to use a closed question, a question which causes somebody to not really dig deeply into their brain matter, then they're not going to really cause a new neural connection, and that in itself means there's probably not a lot of growth. Whereas if you ask a question such as what ideas do you have for improving or changing this particular thing, then somebody has to then start dig around. Now that's a relatively straightforward question, but you can actually push the questions quite a bit, such as if there was no barriers towards taking this thing forward, what would be the first thing you would do? Now somebody has to really search around inside their brain to actually find something that they could actually apply immediately without necessarily having any restrictions or cost limitations. And that is a powerful way of pushing somebody to think. In fact, I raced motorbikes for many years, and I've even applied it in that context. I don't race motorcycles anymore, but I have worked with a few people around that particular field. And it's just, getting them to think a little bit more around, if you knew that you weren't going to fall off on this corner, what different line would you take? And people start to think in that way. So it's really the questions that push people. And I personally believe that leaders should learn the skill of leading with questions, but in such a way as it empowers and engages people to think things through for themselves, because you're creating stronger people. You're creating more resilient, more capable people by asking questions in that way.
Yeah, love that. Thank you for sharing that. I read something, or somebody said to me the other week. They said that at Amazon, the most senior person in the room, they speak last because they don't want to bias the thinking of everybody else in the room, so they don't want to give their opinion and thoughts, but to allow the space for everybody to think. Question for you, Mike Denison. Using a what question, what advice would you give your pre-Toyota self now looking back?
What advice would I give my pre-Toyota self? Couple of pieces, really. One is trust more in yourself. Believe that you actually have the capacity to do things. That would be one thing. For a number of years, I probably lacked a bit of confidence. Getting to the age that I am now, I'm very confident in my person, in myself, in my skin. I'm very confident in what I do and how I approach it. I'm very confident in my life. So trust more in yourself, but actually ask for help more. Ask people around you. But to be fair, I mean, that has to be in an environment where asking for help is positive and good. And not all organizations support that framework. Certainly I've worked in organizations that didn't support that. So when you're asking for help in certain environments, it's difficult. But what I would say is ask for help for people around you that you trust and who believe in you. So there is always places you can ask for help. I mean, the whole thing at the moment with the difficulties that some people are having with mental health is an example, and a lot of reasons that people struggle with that is those two things actually. They probably don't trust themselves. They don't have a high level of self-regard and self-esteem. And the second thing is, which we all deserve, to be fair, but sometimes it has to be developed and evolved. But the second thing is they often don't know how to ask for help. They don't know who to ask, and they don't know how to ask for it. And I think as human beings, we all want to help somebody else, mostly. And so I think there are a lot of people out there who probably, if they were prepared to open up a little bit more and share a bit more and pull the people around them who could help them, they would, develop amazing things in their lives. Amazing things.
Yeah, I love that. And when you started giving your answer, then you were talking about it's got to be in an organisation that is open to that. And how does a leader create that environment where it's okay that failure is acceptable, or asking for help is acceptable, or how would they go about that?
That's an interesting question, because first off is you have to look at the other person as bigger than they are. You have to almost, when you're viewing that person, if you start to view them as being less than you, then you look at them with all their faults against you as a person. Whereas actually, I tend to now, certainly for the last 20 odd years, I tend to look at every single person I work with and engage with as being bigger and better and greater than me. Not with a view that I defer to them, more with a view that actually they have capacity for unbelievable things. And my role as a leader is to try and get it out to them. So I would say, how does a leader do it? Well, first thing they have to do, they have to have an intention to want to develop somebody. And they have to have an intention of accepting that mistakes happen. We are human. There is no one in this world anywhere who has never made a mistake. And actually, we learn far more from our mistakes than ever we learn if things go well. So mistakes are actually positive and good. I wouldn't say we should encourage them, meaning, we just accept them for what they are. I think every mistake has to be learned from. And so again, a leader can create an environment by when somebody does make a mistake, or they make an error, or they overlook something, or they misjudge something, then I think the leader's role is really to think about, well, what would you have done differently? If you could have that time again, what would you have done differently? And what did you learn from that? And how would you apply that? And if you were to teach somebody else to not make that mistake, what would you show them? What would you do? What would you do with that person? And so I think it's having this intention for helping and developing another person. I also think it's having the intention of being kind to people, caring for them. And I also think it's the intention around accepting that human beings will make mistakes, but that we can limit those mistakes by having good structures in the way that we operate. For example, Toyota, one of their big frameworks for developing people and teaching people and developing the next generation is standardized work, or standardized working. In other words, documenting how we do a particular task, specifically more complex tasks, in such a way that it means that it can't be interpreted ambiguously. And I think that creating that environment that's the environment which is a growing environment. It's a learning environment. It's an environment which creates a feeling of trust and a feeling of confidence that these people believe in me and trust me.
Yeah. So you said there that about the leader's intention. A lot of leaders that I've had the opportunity to observe and to see in action, a lot of them are self-motivated, or the initial motivations appear to be some of selfish, but as opposed to selfless. How do you, as a leadership coach, as an exec coach, how do you get them to realize that actually they need to be work on I guess if that's a scale from selfish to selfless, they need to be more selfless as opposed to selfish in their intentions and motivations?
That's an interesting one. Sometimes that's built in the way that they've been educated themselves, who they've worked with, their peers, how they've grown up, how they've learned to struggle and fit into the world. So sometimes it's a character that gets developed. Now, you don't want to lose some of that character. What you want to do is develop it. So I think much more around, I think as human beings, we need to be selfish in the sense of we need to recognize that we are important, that we are valuable. I think that is a selfish thing, but you're doing it with a view to contributing to the world. If somebody's doing something selfishly to make more money at the cost of somebody else's pain or difficulty or standing on somebody else's position to try and get on in the world, then that's not really the right approach. But I think we all have to have a level of selfishness to actually fit into the world, because it's who we are as human beings. You need that to have self-respect. You need that to have self-worth. So I think that's important. But the other side is the world thrives on collaboration and relationships. So you can't move forward without learning from somebody else, supporting somebody else, helping somebody else, working with somebody else. So I think it's recognizing that you're not an island in this world. We are part of everything else. And I struggle with that. I'm quite an independent person. So I don't really tend to feel I need a lot of people around me. But as I've grown older, I've started to recognize that actually you do need people around you to get on in the world. If you want to build a company, you don't build a company on your own. You build a company with colleagues and people around you. So I think the real thing is it's a balance between selfishness and selflessness. I don't think it can be all one way or the other. If you were totally selflessness, you might forget about yourself and how important it is to develop and grow yourself. So therefore, you put all your attention into other people, and then you feel worthless. You can feel worthless yourself. So I think it's a balance between the two, really. But I mean, I as I say, I've got a number of programs that I use to try and help people overcome that particular side of their character. And a lot of it is really about helping them to recognize how important it is to draw on the strengths of people around them.
Yeah, yeah, love that, love that. I could talk to you all day, mate. You've got such an interesting and amazing perspective on everything. I guess I think during your intro, you call it. I don't think you said this word, but you're a lifelong learner, and you like putting yourself in uncomfortable positions, and you like to grow. Has that always been the case, or have you learned to learn, or is it always been inside you?
I would say, have I always put myself in uncomfortable positions? I would say no. My traditional family background and values is one of quite conservatism, meaning my father was quite balanced. He wouldn't take risks. I think I was less risk averse than he was. So, riding motorbikes, racing motorbikes, you've got to say that I had a level of risk that I was prepared to take. But as I've grown older and older, and certainly when I set my own company up, I suddenly recognized that actually we grow far more by stretching ourselves. And so I literally did. I took contracts and work that was high risk, huge risks involved. I had one client in Australia. And I won't go into the detail of it, but to give you an example, at the very beginning, I didn't have a lot of capital behind me. I could have borrowed money, I guess, but there was a time where I really did want to do this work with this client. It looked like a real opportunity. It was an opportunity for a level of application of what I'd learned. There was some good stuff in there, but I couldn't convince the client to actually take me on. So basically, what I said is that okay, I'll come out to Australia. I will do the work. And I will prove to you that I am the value that you need to enable you to move your project on. And that's what I did. So I spent somewhere in the region of £10,000 or £15,000 without knowing I was going to actually get any return from it, on the basis that I borrowed the money, I went out there, I supported this client, and at the end of the 8 weeks, basically we sat down and I said, do you think I'm worth it? And they said absolutely, and we agreed the contract. But basically, that's high risk. You've got to be prepared to be able to step out and trust and believe in yourself. And it might have gone wrong. And if it had gone wrong, you think about, well, what did I learn from that? And so I would say I have, over the last 20 years, certainly, I have stretched myself, and I've taken contracts and projects and worked with people that really pushed me. And that's really where I think, lots of people don't push themselves too much. They like to keep a level of comfort in there, but actually if you're too comfortable too often, then you don't grow. We don't grow in our comfort zone. We grow when we're being stretched. That's when a new neural connection starts to fire up in your brain, and that's when you start to expand your capacity for doing things. And if you keep working on that, that becomes more familiar. And when it becomes more familiar, eventually that becomes comfortable. You asked me before, it's not too uncomfortable, is it, sitting in a bath talking with me? Well, it's not, but I'm not stretching myself. So if I thought, right, I needed to stretch myself, what would I do differently to be able to do that? And it only comes through repetition of stretching yourself to such a level that means that you are growing continuously. There is a slight thing to think about in that. I can't think of the word, but what I mean by that is you do have to have relaxation time. You do have to have a time where you're agreeing not to stretch, because if you're stretching, eventually that stretching can cause an overwhelm, and that level of overwhelm can mean then you move into a stress position and everything else. Our body is not designed to be stretched continuously. It's been designed to be stretched and then to be held in a place, and then stretched and then to be held in a place. So I think you have to balance that. You have to recognize that. Don't stretch yourself continually every single day. I mean, athletes, yes, they will do that, but they'll do it for 5 years or 10 years, and then they agree this is how they are, and then they move into a different realm of what they're doing. But if you're stretching yourself continually and never ever giving yourself that stability in there, I think that can create a level of overwhelm. It's certainly happened that way for me, and I've learned that you need to temper it a little bit. Would be a way of looking at it.
Yeah, love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think I've seen a number of your posts where you've dressed up as Evel Knievel. You're in the bath with me today. Kev, our mutual friend, it keeps mentioning to me about Postman Pat. Have you always not taken yourself seriously, or is there a reason why you push yourself on that front as well?
Yeah, no, it's probably some of it is to stretch, some of it is to challenge. I do like challenges. I don't like being like anybody else, I guess. I like being just a little bit different, and so I will do things that either shock or make people smile or happy, or give a little bit of instability into it where people don't really know what to expect of me. It's just being a little bit off the wall, really. I mean, for example, you talked about the Evel Knievel. I did a charity run around North Wales, around the whole of Wales, in the spring bank holiday, and there was 30 of us, and we all rode around Wales on motorbikes. We were all dressed as Evel Knievel, and the idea behind it was to collect money for charity, and we did. We collected close on £30,000 for cancer, Macmillan cancer support. But everyone else was doing that, and there was 30 of us, and I thought I have to do something else. So I took a hammock. So I slept in a hammock. They slept in a hotel each night. I slept in a hammock outside of the hotel, even when it was raining. Slung the hammock over the bike up to a post, and then I slept in a hammock. So that was just me being different, and I guess in some ways there's a part of me that likes that notoriety without being bad, if you know what I mean. I don't want to be a bad person, but I like the notoriety where, when someone comes there and they're saying, "Oh my God, he is sleeping in a hammock. I thought he was joking about that." I just like being that bit different.
Yeah, love that. So what's next for Mike Denison?
What's next for Mike Denison? Well, I guess I'm in a bit of a transitionary period at the moment. So I'm trying to think about how I can add even more value over the next 4 or 5 years. And so the coaching side of things and the work and the client stuff, it will continue at a much reduced rate to give me some capacity so that I can get involved in a couple of things. I've been looking at a few different organizations where I can support and help. Probably more from a contributory thing or a voluntary thing rather than actual paid. But I'm looking for something where I can stretch myself again, but I can actually add value. And it's where do I believe I can add the greatest value? So I'm using this summer to reflect on that and think about where I can take my skills, talents, knowledge, experience to next, I guess. Haven't really fully decided that, but I will have made a decision by maybe midwinter, so that 2022 will see me moving into something where I can actually contribute more on a voluntary basis, I think. Yeah. Obviously, still riding my motorbike, still stretching the boundaries of things, still sitting in a bath with a stranger. You've
got so much value that you can offer. So if people wanted to follow you on your journey, understand more about you, connect with you, contact you, where would they go? What would they do?
I've tended to let some of the working stuff drop off a little bit, really. So the website is not really valid at this moment in time. So my LinkedIn, Mike Denison on LinkedIn is a good one to keep in touch. The other one is Lean Leader Coach on Twitter is probably a good one. I'm usually posting on that. I do a lot of posting around kata. I'm helping a lot of people at the moment develop their kata capability. So I post a lot of that on that, and I support a lot in that realm or that field. So they're probably the two best areas. Or you can get in touch with me directly at mike.denison@leanmentorinternational.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Mike. Thank you so much for joining me in the bath today. It's been an absolute pleasure. The water is getting a little bit cold. My fingers are getting a little bit wrinkly. So we'll call that a day. But I just want to say thank you so much for the value that you shared with me in the last half an hour, but then also in the last couple of years when we've got to know each other. So I just want to say thank you so much, Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure, and good luck with everything that you've got going on.
Likewise. Cheers, Lee. Have a great day.